Alright, welcome to the Cult of Larry Draft League. This will be a video presentation, and I'm Dr. Geo. With me is
P McGee.
And today, what we're going to bring to you is the story and the reasons on how the legend begins. The legend, of course, is of Larry. Now, before we get any further, if you like this type of content, I want you to hit the like button, subscribe, and you won't hear anything else from that. More importantly, the first season of Larry's Draft League will be starting at the end of February of 2022. So we have a link in the description of this video for applications for the Discord server. So go ahead, join, come be a part of the community. We're hopefully getting the Legends Arceus mons added into this first season as well. It should be a lot of fun, and we hope to see you all there. Now, having gotten the business out of the way, did I forget anything?
No, I think we've got all the plugs we need to get into.
Okay. Now that business is out of the way, let's ask the question, who is Larry?
So, for those of you unaware, which of course ironically is an ability of his, Larry is a Pyukumuku. The name kind of dates back to him being a sea cucumber, and so Larry the cucumber back from my own childhood watching some VeggieTales. And so it just made sense as a fun little nickname for what is otherwise a very unassuming cucumber. And he has had quite a historic career, at least for me, in Draft League. And we are going to dissect some of the ways he can be used and how he has kind of risen to prominence and how you can maybe use him as well and make him do some really fun things for you. But he kind of just got picked up as my, oh shoot, I forgot a bulky water, which is something people forget all the time. And so when you find yourself in that spot inevitably at some point in your draft career, why not take a look at Larry the Pyukumuku? Because I promise you he can be a very, very, very effective mon for his tiering.
I think the thing is, and other than outside of leagues you are a part of, as you've said, you've had significant success with him. His reputation precedes you, if you will. You'll usually find him tiered in a National Dex format for 3 or 4 points. I think a few leagues that you've terrorized have bumped him up to 5 even. And that's maybe a little high, but this is an unassuming little mon. You look at its stats, it has a below average HP stat. Attack stats, meh.
Which
Defense,
don't matter.
Yeah, defense and special defense are pretty good. Special attack is laughable, and speed is actually so low. It's good, honestly.
Then we'll explain why later.
So as you've picked up Larry, and we're gonna call him Larry throughout the rest of this video, so deal with it. But as you picked up Larry, this is coming from you. These are the roles you have found him to have the most success in, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, there's lots of other ways you can play it. I do want to make note, and we'll get to it in a second. He can be something like a screen setter. I've not found success in that, and I haven't really attempted it just because my team compositions don't usually make sense and require that. But generally, he just serves as a great physical wall. His access to baton pass with that aforementioned atrocious speed stat makes him actually a really effective slow pivot, so he can come in, eat an attack, pivot out. You can see some fun anti-sweep sets as either an unaware set to prevent something from setting up and sweeping, or as an innards out mon to just eat the attack from the sweeper and then KO it back with the ability. And then there's some fun sets that can be trappers. It's a really difficult thing to pull off. You really have to have good situational awareness about the opponent, but it's a very potent set if you can squeeze it in for the right matchup and you don't exploit it too much. But those are really how he functions. Primarily, it's going to be as a physical wall and slow pivot, but the other roles are options as well as you get more comfortable with using him.
Yeah, so let's dive into some of these sets a bit more specifically. So the critical moves for Larry, like these two are like your bread and butter. Recover, baton pass. Larry's a wall, so reliable recovery is good. Baton pass allows him to maintain momentum, so he's not a dead end. And I think that's a large part of the misconception on Larry is that people feel that it's a dead end mon, and like, is it passive? Yeah, kinda.
Oh, absolutely.
But
Forgot attacking moves, but
yeah, like look at these critical moves. Not a single one of them is a traditional attacking move. Like Mirko and counter, sure. Those are technically attacking moves. Like i.e., you can click them through taunt, right?
yes, yeah. So that gives him ability to not be stuck struggling if he happens to get taunted. So taunt isn't and this is what you'll hear a lot is people will say, "Oh, Larry, just taunt it and you beat it," which generally, yeah, it can be effective as a strategy, but it doesn't prevent him from smacking you back. So you're basically forced to run taunt and like a status move like toxic to really push through him in a way that he wouldn't be able to fight back. Otherwise, if you're taunting him, it's not really stopping him. So it's not a dead end for him.
Yeah, so these first couple moves really kind of fit in with the wall motif, recover, baton pass, counter, toxic mirror coat. Cool. I think it gets a little more interesting on the back half of these critical moves.
Oh, absolutely.
Rest, sure, we see that. Block and soak, I think you start to see that a little more. And this is a ladder set, the block and soak, to get rid of bulky steals. So has been seen, because Soak will change the typing of the enemy Pokemon to water, so they lose their stab against Larry, which is a big help. Block keeps them from switching out unless it's Ghost type, and then you can usually Toxic it. So that's how you can spread Toxic to Steel types. But now, why don't you explain some of these last couple moves after Soak?
Yeah. So sometimes you're not interested in poison stalling something because you know it's going to be a subset or something like that. I think we'll get into it in a video, but there's specific mons that are a real pain for Pyukumuku to push through. Something like Suicune or Zygarde really like to subset up. And so what you can do is kind of block them in before they sub, and then you can just Spite and take away all of their PP slowly but surely, because Spite takes away 4 PP of the last used move. And then as you start to run out of PP for Spike, because I believe it only has 10 or 16 PP, I can't remember, you just click Recycle, and you're holding a Lepa Berry, or I'm sorry, your Lepa Berry will fix it, and then you've consumed your Lepa Berry, and then you'll just click Recycle, and you'll get your Lepa Berry back. And so you can essentially indefinitely stall these things, because you'll have something like 200 Spites to use, or something ridiculous, before you ran out of PP on Recycle, and you couldn't get your Lepa Berry back anymore. It's really gross. It's hard to find the situation for it, but if you're dealing with some static mons that otherwise might be able to wall him or try to sub and kind of shut him down with setup, the Recycle set can be really, really gross. And then Gastro Acid is one of those moves you almost never see him play, but it has a couple of very specific situational matchups that I think are of value. So what Gastro Acid does is it negates the ability of a Pokemon, and this is especially relevant when a Pokemon has an ability that would make it immune to like something like toxic damage. So maybe Gliscor with Poison Heal or Clefable with Magic Guard. You can Gastro Acid those abilities so that they lose their protection from that status, and especially in the case of Gliscor, it can turn what makes him really, really not overpowered, but really
it's what defines
strong.
Him.
Yeah, it's a defining factor in Draft League, and you can just spin it 180 on him and then making him eat that toxic damage, because it's a toxic orb, so that damage counter accumulates. And I don't know if everyone always realizes this, but that accumulates every turn, whether or not he's taking the toxic damage. So if he sat in the field for 15, 20 turns, you use Gastro Acid, all of a sudden he's eating like 80% of his health at the end of that turn. So it's a really, really good way of punishing some of these things like Clefable or Gliscor that otherwise have a really easy time sitting on the field, and you can just turn that on, turn that sideways on them.
Yeah. Lastly, even though you haven't used it as such, it can set up screens, which, screens with slow momentum is very powerful. You see
some Larry disciples have used it. I've seen some replays of them doing it. They play to a way that is more beneficial to their playstyle than it's ever been to mine, and it's been very successful for them. So, which is why I wanted to include it, because it's quite effective if you can create the right situation for it.
Yes. So, having said that, the key items you're looking to run: Leftovers, Rocky Helmet, Mental Herb to break through that taunt, the Lepa Berry for the Spite, or light clay if you're into screens. And depending on the
Yeah.
matchup, you can always squeeze other items in. I'm sure there's a non-zero chance where you even would consider boots. But
Yeah, I mean, there's
getting
matchups.
super niche at that
Yeah, there's matchups for like a Wakan berry or like a Rindo berry if you're trying to. I don't is Rindo? Yeah, Rindo berry. If you're really trying to bait out an attack for maybe like a Rillaboom trying to hit you with Grassy Glide or something like that, where you can really smack it hard back. I've not done that. I don't try to get super specific with pinch berries, not pinch berries, but super effective berries that often. But it is an option if you see the situation for it. But the reason I always promote Larry as a physical wall is because of that defensive stat with the Rocky Helmet, which really shuts down a lot of Pokemon trying to hit you or pivot, because U-turn and flip turn start dealing with that Rocky Helmet chip all the time, and so that's why he can be a really effective physical wall. He's okay as a specially defensive wall in the right situations. I tend not to find him as effective as he is as a physical wall, just because he can be really anti-momentum and really shut down a lot of things, just with his ability to eat the attack for less than 50%, get him for the Rocky Helmet chip, and then just keep recover stalling until they switch out, which is where he's the most potent.
Right. Okay, so having explained all of these different sets, ways that you can use them, let's see how they're used in an actual real-life example.
Yep.
We have a series of battles that we're going to go through today, 6 or 7, and we'll leave timestamps on the video so you can find them easily enough so you can just kind of see. So first off, we have you against Balsamically.
Yep.
Who knows when this match was, so kind of give us a little preamble here. Like, this is turn 1, so it's not, all these matches we've kind of gotten to the important bits. What is Larry's role here?
So going into this match, you can see from team preview, this is a sand team I am dealing with, and Dracozolt is on this team. My only ground type is a Nidoking, which is not a solid Dracozolt answer, because Dracozolt can really easily push through that with its Dragon Stab. Whether it's going to Draco Meteor or Dragon Claw, it has no issue at all breaking Nidoking.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I was doing with the Silvally, but he wasn't well suited to be a ground type Silvally in that matchup. I believe he had another role he had to do. Mm-hmm. And so I was in this really difficult spot where Dracozolt had a really easy time pressuring me. And so the goal going into this match was to bait out the Dracozolt and then let it KO my Pyukumuku, run, I believe it's max HP, and in this case it's max special defense in case it's a Draco Meteor set, so I take minimum amounts of damage. And then I have like no defensive investment so that I'm confident that the Bolt Beak will one-hit KO me. And then with the Rocky Helmet chip plus the plus the innards out recoil damage, it reliably one-hit KOs Dracozolt back and gets it out of play so that I'm not pressured by that anymore. And so that's what I am going for in this matchup, and I'm intentionally trying to bait it out because I don't bring Nidoking to bait out the Bolt Beak as quickly and early as possible. And so that's why we are actually starting this one on turn 1, because it's really easy to create that situation early when you pretend there's an opening, like I am pretending he has an opening to do it in this matchup. So
right,
go ahead.
Let's get into it. So yeah, this is pretty obvious. Let's see. Volt switch. U-turn, back to Grin, teleport. Nice.
Dracozolt, and then why waste any time? Just let the Dracozolt kill me. And this is why it's important to have that little bit of Rocky Helmet damage, because I needed that little bit of damage to help KO it at the end. And then that's really opens up my game. It takes away a lot of pressure, and then it lets a really peculiar Diancie set kind of come in and sweep. But that's the gist of that matchup of what he was trying to do.
So there you see Suicide Larry in action right off the bat. Bam, bam, get a few turns in glorious fashion.
And then it opens up my game, because now he has so much pressure, physical pressure with the Excadrill, the Medicham, the Dracozolt. To get one of them out of play immediately on a 1-for-1 is worth it for me, and it really helps create situations. So that's what I liked about Suicide Larry in that matchup, just to eliminate some pressure mons as quickly as possible.
I dig it. Okay, let's take a look at this next match here. We have XPFC Wintergreen versus you, and the turn 1 matchup is the Pyukumuku versus Bronzong. Now, I'm going to just take a stab in the dark here from what I've learned. Is this a trapping set?
This is a trapping set.
Because this looks like a turn 1 matchup where Bronzong, it's pretty, quote unquote, pretty safe time to set up rocks.
Yeah, so I believe this was a week 3 matchup, maybe week 4. But what I had observed in the first few weeks in this league was that this opponent had led Bronzong every week it came. And Bronzong had a really good matchup against me overall. I didn't have a great pressure option for it. Nidoking struggles a little bit to hit it for good damage.
Yeah.
Zapdos isn't doing great. Diancie actually has a really awful time breaking through Bronzong. So what I saw was a very likely Bronzong lead just because I couldn't pressure it with any one lead off as well.
It can
and
just do whatever it needs to do. Like,
yep. It can set its rocks, take its time. It's not stressed about this Pyukumuku because to this point I really haven't shown trapping sets with Pyukumuku. It's just still really early in my Pyukumuku career. I believe this is only the second or third league I used him in to that point. So he hadn't really shown off as a trapper or just, a potent mon in general. So I successfully call his lead off in this one, which is really, really critical to this working because Pyukumuku doesn't generally lead unless you're trying to get a specific situation, which I was able to get in this one.
So let's see. Oh, he goes for the screens. Okay, same idea.
Block, soak. It doesn't really have a way to pressure, and then I'm just toxic stalling.
Yeah.
And just like that, and that's huge for me because that opens up Diancie for the rest of the game. That lets Nidoking spam Earth Power, I believe, at that point pretty freely.
Yeah.
Zapdos and all have an easier time doing damage, and then the Pyukumuku has a really easy time clicking Toxic the rest of the game because this is his Toxic answer more or less. Besides,
he can't
Fable.
touch it. Yeah, he can't touch
No.
it.
And so things with Pyukumuku generally aren't quick, but they're effective. It still takes like 10 turns to actually kill the Bronzong, but it's out of play pretty quickly. And then it just lets Larry kind of just get a really easy early KO. And I lose 0% health in the process of removing one of his.
He just has reflect
response.
So we can stop that there. But there you have it. That would be the blocking set in action. Let's hop over to this next replay.
Yeah.
Turn 3. This is between RoboPup27 and yourself. So this is our first match already. A few turns in, we can see that you have a Mega Altaria that is down. So something happened earlier in the match, and Alt's dead. What can you do?
Yeah, it got crit. I remember this. It got crit on a turn it shouldn't have died. It was brutal. Almost tilted me.
Yeah, I can see from the side. It's a Dazzling Gleam from the Victini. So.
Yep.
Anywho, what's your idea for Pyukumuku here? Like,
so
when you
what
go for this, what went through your head?
He has a lot of scary subsets that are really good toxic spammers as well. So the Zygarde has a really easy time sub-toxicking. The Suicune has a really easy time sub-toxicking. And I have a hard time dealing with those pressures. So what becomes really, really clear for me is that I can't stop those from happening, but I can stop them from being effective. And so what Pyukumuku is really well positioned to do here is run that Lepa Berry set. So rest over recover because he doesn't scream damage. Look at the mons he has on the field. His strongest Pokemon that he has in Team Preview is the Victini, which can't hit me for good stab, and the Zygarde, which actually only is a base 100 attack. So he's not screaming damage early in this game. And this Victini's already showed Dazzling Gleam, so it's not even a well-suited Victini to pressure Pyukumuku. So what I see here is an opportunity to call how static and sub-heavy his team is and just pressure that with Pyukumuku. So our rest, block, spite, and then recycle. And so essentially what I do is I try to trap something like the Suicune or the Zygarde or the Aromatisse and then just PP stall them and keep them on the field because I am not going to lose on my PP, and I basically force them into struggling to death. It's not a quick event. It's going to take like 30. It's going to take like 20 turns to do, but it's effective. Yeah.
Here comes the Suicune. You have a U-turn, and out comes Larry.
Yep. For a really easy block, he goes into Aromatisse. It's the same impact. Aromatisse is trapped now. It's going to Moonblast me. I'm going to just immediately start spiting it. And this is the very first time I'd ever successfully attempted this set, so it's not something that people are generally aware of. And so what I don't believe RoboPup is aware of as this match is going, at least during this initial encounter, is that I have essentially unlimited spites to work with. He's essentially trying to PP stall my spite so that he only loses Aromatisse. He's acknowledged the Aromatisse is going to be lost. There's barring a crit, there's not much he can do to protect it.
Right.
Because I'm just going to keep resting here, and I don't care about my rest. I don't lose any PP while I'm resting, so it's even more efficient at burning PP because I'm not losing any during these sleep turns. I'm just kind of sitting here and, waiting to wake up again.
We even saw a crit there, and so it's essentially like all high rolls with one crit is needed to bring the Larry down.
Yep, and he's just quite content to sit here until the Moonblasts run out. And he's just to keep resting. And it's going to work, especially once the Moonblast runs out, because I'm forced to keep on this rest cycle while he's spamming Moonblast, because I can't spite yet while I'm getting smacked with these Moonblasts. Right. So now that is starting to wear out, so I'm able to spite on that turn, get rid of more Moonblasts. I'm going to rest on this turn. Well, he's not seen the set yet, so he's not aware of the Recycle Lepiberry that's in play here, so he's just literally trying to PP stall at this point and do a 1-for-1, which is the best option he has, without all the information.
Yeah, we're throwing it on hyper speed here because this.
Remember, this started on turn 4.
Yeah,
we're on. And he's in struggle now, so he's run out of PP finally. He's in struggle, and I believe I showed Recycle at one point because I ran out of spite PP.
So turn 42.
It took 40 turns to successfully achieve, and I'm going to.
Yeah, it's cut off on the screen, but you did recycle once, so.
Okay, and I'm going to do the exact same thing to remove the Zygarde and the Suicune from play because neither have the
ability to
immediate power. You can't break Pyukumuku without boosts, and I'm unaware, so I'm not being affected by their boosts. And so they're both incapable of pushing through it as well. So he's going to successfully do it to both of those mons as well, which is ironic. No, one is enough. The irony is the Suicune has a pressure set, and the Suicune actually ends up losing the PP battle despite being pressure as an ability. So that just to show you how much PP you can get out of a Spite Recycle set, you're able to PP stall pressure Pokemon, and it works. Yeah, so Zygarde and Suicune are really good Pokemon to consider this set for because they're very static. They're very prone to going sub or toxic, and neither have the breaking power to deal with a rest Pyukumuku. They can't break it quick enough or ever, and you can kind of indefinitely stall until they run out of PP or they leave the field. So that's really a good window for him to be effective in a matchup like this.
All right, let's move on to the next tiers between Circus, HGC, and yourself.
Yep.
You're already ahead in this matchup, but I can tell right now it's gonna be a matchup between this Mega Mile and Larry, isn't it?
It is. And you yourself obviously are aware of how frustrating Pyukumuku can actually be to Mega Mawile. So Mega Mawile, one of the issues that it has is that it only has a 50 HP stat, which is the same as Pyukumuku, so it doesn't have a lot of HP to play with. And so the Rocky Helmet chip plus innards out here, because Pyukumuku can't get out of 2-hit KO range from Mega Mawile. 2-play Roughs has a really strong chance to 2-hit KO Pyukumuku, so it's not a Pokemon it can switch into normally. But what you're essentially trying to do here is bait the Mega Mawile into clicking Play Rough twice, eating both of those turns of Rocky Helmet damage, and then on the second Play Rough, killing the Pyukumuku, so that it eats all of the innards out damage and dies, which, I think everyone can agree, if you can trade your 3-point Mon for an 18-point Mon on the KOs,
you feel pretty good about
you've
that.
won. And Mega Mawile just has a really hard time dealing with Pyukumuku, because to beat it, it's essentially forced to run sub-toxic to get around the innards out and the counter and anything else that the Pyukumuku wants to do.
Right.
And so you're already forcing an 18-point Mon, and Geo ran that exact set, sub-toxic. I had a Corviknight, so I was able to kind of navigate around that.
You didn't even bring Puiku to the match. So
I know.
Larry stayed home.
But, you're forcing an 18-point Mon into running 2 moves to navigate a 3-point wall, and so even if it manages to break it with that kind of setup with like sub-toxic to attack or Swords Dance Play Rough or something like that, you've already won because you've forced their best Mon into a really peculiar set just to push through it. But we'll get into it in a second. Just to give some clarity on this turn, The reason he's gonna flee behind a sub Dragapult is he's tricked me a Choice Scarf on the Noivern. So Noivern's going to outspeed the Dragapult right now, so Dragapult's actually forced to retreat because of Infiltrator.
It brings the Island. Very cool.
Pyukumuku eats the play rough. You know, he can KO it here, obviously. He's going to KO it here, but he's going to eat.
And then the
enters out. And so it's gone.
And
you can...
Effectively, you've traded, like you've said, 18-point Mon for a 3-point Mon. And more often than not, that's going to win you the match.
And you can see from this matchup already, it's pretty clear that was the final nail in the coffin in the matchup, because that Dragapult isn't going to break a Sucker Punch, Urshifu, and a Clefable. The Lycanroc's not going to push through a Mega Aggron, and this Mandibuzz has no way to really damage the Mega Aggron. So that was the final nail in the coffin in a match like that. So it really kind of can be a way to break or destroy their offense and then leave them without a win condition because you've eliminated their 18-point Mon, like what happened here.
Right. Moving on to the next. It's an absolute wild match. We're jumping ahead to turn 127. This is in Uber's league. We kind of foreshadowed this match a little bit here.
Yeah.
You have Mega Lopunny up against Gliscor, but you have the Larry in the back. And so this is the one and only time you've gotten this set to work, correct? Yeah,
yes it is. And it's something we haven't really mentioned yet that I think it's worth noting with Pyukumuku is Pyukumuku actually tends to get a little better the higher up the level of Pokemon there are. So he's got limitations in low tier leagues because they're not, they're much more likely to be stally leagues with, sub and toxic and sub setup, things like that, where he's not as well equipped to thrive. But in a format with everything trying to break immediately or just kind of sweep you like Ubers can be, Pyukumuku actually becomes a really, really effective piece.
It's
because
almost like the Wobbuffet effect.
Yeah, it's just
in the higher tiers than he is in the lower tiers, because the higher tiers can actually hit him hard enough to make his moves matter.
Exactly, and then you end up with a lot of things that end up being choice locked as well. So you'll run into like Zamazenta up here that is stuck with a Rusted Shield, or you'll run into Mega Metagross, the same problem where it has a hard time 2-hit KOing Pyukumuku. And so you have all these item locked mines, which means you can do very specific calcs to know exactly what their damage output is. And you can really get your EVs set up in a nice way to kind of wall those kind of things out. But in this particular matchup, that's not relevant. The Ubers are out of play on both sides. Is the clear win condition here is normally Gliscor is a lot of problem for this team because all I can do is triple axle with Lopunny to try to break it. He's revealed earlier in the match that this is a very defensive Rocky Helmet Tapu Bulu. So if I click triple axle, I'm at risk. Yeah, which could be problematic because that theoretically looks like my win condition because Moltres isn't going to break Gliscor. It's especially defensive Gliscor, so Nihilego is not going to break it either.
Nope.
And so it looks like I'm in a really bad spot at the end game here because I don't have a way to break Gliscor. But really all I need to do, and because this isn't a taunt Gliscor, he's already shown his 4 moves, it's not taunt. All I need to do is get this Tapu Bulu out of play, and Pyukumuku wins. And
so let's see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Tapu Bulu comes in. I'm intentionally trying to suicide here because my Moltres does outspeed it, and my Nihilego does outspeed it. I missed the last one, which would have KO'd it, but the Fire Punch is going to have the same effect here. In theory, it looks like I've lost the matchup because my only breaker for Gliscor is dead, but Pyukumuku is going to come into play here. Earthquake doesn't matter because it's that. And I'm going to click Gastro Acid. And because I click Gastro Acid, now the Gliscor is killing itself with the toxic status it's given because barring really, really particular matchups, Gliscor runs one item and it's Toxic Orb. So I am I'm well suited to abuse that in this matchup because Pyukumuku has that move to suppress the ability and turn that status into a way it ends up dying. And so Pyukumuku is actually able to 1v1 Gliscors that aren't running taunt. So he's able to save what otherwise would have been a lost game because my Moltres was poisoned, my Nihilego couldn't do enough damage. So it was able to secure a win in a matchup I otherwise would have lost.
Very good, and you love to see it.
You do.
Right. Next, this is between Yahoodles and yourself. This is on turn 28.
Yep.
This is another suicide Larry? What's the deal here?
No. So one of the really good benefits of Pyukumuku, if you're going to build it into teams, it's really nice to build it into momentum teams because you can really take advantage of the slow momentum into speed momentum. And you can see on my team, I'm running a Pheromosa, which almost always likes to run U-turn. And the way that's really, really helpful with Pyukumuku is that Pokemon, the opposing Pokemon will go first in front of Pyukumuku every time. So either they sub or they attack, whatever the case is, Pyukumuku eats that attack, slow pivots into the offense you want on the field, and that offense gets on the field safely, and then they're able to pressure. So in this particular circumstance, Pyukumuku has a hard time dealing with Suicune because Suicune can sub really easily or it can toxic. Suicune has a really, really easy time subbing in front of most of my team. I'm going to retreat with my Mega Sableye on this turn, but with that slow baton pass, I'm able to navigate around that substitute and never have anything at risk of taking an unwanted Scald or a Toxic from a Suicune like this because Pyukumuku always eats the attack, and then Pheromosa can always pivot out of the attack, and we can play it now.
All right. Pheromosa comes in. So then you just break the sub, bring in Larry, rinse, repeat.
It's serve, which was a critical and did 18%. It's going to sub again. I'm going to baton pass. And like I said, there's nothing the Suicune can do to this Pheromosa because now I'm going to U-turn out before I take the damage. And then Pyukumuku is going to come right back onto the field and eat a surf and not care about the damage. I believe I recover on this turn just to be safe. And then that's the end of that exchange. But it denies Suicune pretty much most of its health and puts me in a really good spot to clean it up late game.
Really the benefit of slow pivot.
Yep.
It's a free teleport. We don't need to watch anymore.
Yeah, literally the only thing that goes slower than that is something teleporting. That's the only way it's going to be
or roaring or any negative priority.
Yeah, that's the only way Pyukumuku goes second, which is really helpful because it can let it eat attacks that you don't want other mons eating, especially if you're running fragile offensive pieces like Pheromosa or Mega Beedrill or even Mega Mawile that doesn't want to take attacks. You can have Pyukumuku. Yeah, Pyukumuku eats the attack, and then this is a good way of creating winning field position because your opponent is forced to do something on that turn. They can't just keep clicking Surf at Pyukumuku. It's not a winning game. They're forced to either switch out or sub or something like that, and then you get that second slower momentum, and then you get to reestablish field control with whatever offensive piece you want. So he is really, really good in that role, and opponents have a really tough time pushing through that if they don't bring a lot of answers for him.
Very cool. All right, let's finish this off on a last match here. This is between JCaps and yourself. I know it doesn't say JCaps, but everyone knows that that's JCaps.
Yep.
So what's going on here? You have, Aromatisse.
Yeah, Aromatisse is not well equipped to handle this Gardevoir. So something you have to be aware of, obviously, with Pyukumuku is that sub setup sets can be really scary because if they can push through Pyukumuku, they can win games. And so the big thing with sub setup sets is being positioned to survive as much damage as possible and then break subs. So Mirror Coat is really good for that. Obviously, Counter is good for that. And the thing that can be really beneficial to dealing with it, because sometimes people will think I can just set up and eventually Pyukumuku is going to run out of attacks or mess up and then I'm going to break through.
Yeah.
But Substitute doesn't have a lot of PP. I think it's only 16. And then if you use a setup move, then you got 32 Calm Minds, but those aren't doing any damage. And then 2 attacks or 1 attack and recover or something like that. Mm-hmm. It just leaves you really, really vulnerable to not being able to push through Pyukumuku. So in this particular circumstance, this Gardevoir is about to start setting up, but it's not going to have Wish on this Gardevoir set. So every bit of damage it takes subbing again is not damage. Exactly. So me trading Pyukumuku to break subs is plenty beneficial as long as I can keep it front facing and not hiding behind that sub. And you can see I have Mega Scizor on my side of the bench. So if Gardevoir isn't behind that sub, then anything revenge kills it, or Scizor easily revenge kills it. So right. I can easily trade Pyukumuku for that and feel okay. But you can go ahead.
Let's see it in action. It goes for the Calm Mind. Wish into Larry. So any attack, you just heal right back up. Which, as you can see, is pretty needed. 54. Calm Mind, but you're unaware, I assume.
I am unaware, yeah, which is big because I was aware that this Gardevoir might try a set like that. And I believe, yeah, this was a league where Tail Glow Manaphy was allowed as well, so you want to be
Yeah, you need the unaware.
careful of that. I'm basically just spamming Mirror Coat at this point because I need to. I have 32. That's the nice thing with Mirror Coat is it has 32 PP, so it's really easy to spam. And then Mirror Coat is enough to break a Gardevoir sub. Yeah. And so this is the big thing here is it's Mystical Fire, Hyper Voice, and then 2 attacks. So he's not well positioned to deal with this. I'm going to flip turn here just to kind of test for damage, and that's enough to break it. And then Colossal is a forced throwaway here, which isn't a big deal. Like I said, lets me bring in Scizor. Gardevoir isn't behind that sub anymore, so I'm really well positioned to deal with that threat.
Kind of another game.
So that's that.
So that's pretty cool. So we've shown a lot of different ways that you can run Pyukumuku, Larry, and hopefully you can draw some inspiration from these.
Yeah.
So that's all that we have for you all. Go ahead and draft Larry in your leagues. Show people it's the absolute low point menace that it is. Just remember, it gets stronger the stronger mons are available in the pool. So I'm sure it's fine in a low tier league, but your mileage may vary if the strongest thing on the field is an Umbreon.
I think some fun calcs to be aware of with Pyukumuku is that a lot of things that are running Jolly Natures can't 2-hit KO it. Mega Glade can't 2-hit KO it. Mega Lopunny can't 2-hit KO it. Urshifu, if it's Jolly Nature, Wicked Blow won't 2-hit KO it. Unless, So these are... Mega Mawile can't... Mega Mawile... Exactly. Mega Mawile and Mega Medicham can 2-hit KO it, but their HP stats are so bad that they're going to die in the process of essentially doing that. So you can really manipulate those kind of high tier mons and just kind of shut them down, prevent them from blasting through your team. A couple of points to be aware of with Pyukumuku, just as general points of caution. Mold Breaker goes through unaware. It's one of those things you don't see too often matchup wise. But there's a couple of things like Mega Gyarados, or even if someone's actually paying attention with their Hawlucha for once, a Hawlucha with Mold Breaker instead of trying to run on burden sets can actually set up on Pyukumuku and sweep. But those are all really hard things for opponents to do and bring for a 3-point mon. To change up your entire win condition to navigate a 3-point mon is really, really tough. And so if you're in a position to draft this and utilize it in a way that's effective, make sure you get yourself a Cleric, because if he doesn't have a Cleric, he just gets Toxic Spammed and he falls apart. So you gotta run something like a Vaporeon, an Umbreon, Sylveon, Clefable, or some other kind of Cleric mod so that he has that needed aromatherapy. Otherwise, he's at real danger of being just spammed with Toxic. Yeah. But he's really, really fun to use. Baton Pass is super underrated in draft just because not a lot of slow mons get it. Fast Baton Pass isn't that useful, but slow Baton Pass is incredible.
Very useful.
It's essentially teleport. I mean, if this isn't, obviously things like Slow King or Slowbro are a little bit better situated because they get that regenerator and negative priority teleport. But this is 3 points and does the same role and can be just as much of a menace if planned for.
Yeah. So I guess we'll wrap it up with that. I do want to say that, again, come join the Discord, hang out, give us your thoughts on this video. We are going to turn this into a series, I think, and every now and again we'll make a video on a low point mon, kind of showcase its benefits, how it could be used, really where you get value of it. And I think for low point mon here, we're talking like 10 points and below. Like we're not sticking to 3 points and below, because that's going to be a pretty short series, I think.
Yeah, there's like 2 or 3 other notable mons to bring up, but I know there's some fun things like 8 points and below that we have identified. I know Geo has a particular dragon he's very fond of. I think we'll do a video for soon, and so I'm looking forward to more of these discussions and more of these videos. And I think there are a lot of really good mons that people don't realize are available on the board and worth taking the time to consider that can really fill some great roles on a team if you are kind of eyeballing them as you're going near the end of draft. I think a lot of times people get to the end of their draft and they're like, oh crap, I'm out of points. What's left? And then they just kind of impulsively grab something they haven't really considered. And so I think the goal of this video series is going to be to highlight some really valuable niche role pickups that can help a team function really, really well.
Yeah. So again, thank you all for watching. We're going to go ahead and end it here. I've been Dr. Geo. With me is
P McGee.
We'll see you all later.